Well, folks, you saw the title. Unfortunately, there's been a death in the family. My poor Uncle Leo has passed away. He was 69 years old. Now, I'm going to give you some names that are going to be important through this story, and I'll tell you who he was and why he was very important to me. And I also have some old throwback video, never before shown, that I have that I'll give you just a little taste of that. Pardon me. So, my Uncle Leo is my father's brother. My father had two brothers and one sister. Both brothers now have passed away. His sister is left. So out of the four, there's two left. My dad is the oldest of all of them. My Uncle Leo had a troubled life, we can say, but behind all of that was a man of such character, I honestly don't even know where to begin. So the names that are important here are my Uncle Leo, so that's the gentleman who died, his wife Mary, and his son Kevin. Kevin is my cousin. Now, Kevin was born, I think, 4 years after me, so he's 4 years younger, and I remember when he was born, because I was 4 years old, and I remember all of that stuff, and him growing up, and us growing up, my sister and I, and all that stuff over the years, and whatever, and, well, fast forward past the little, tiny tot stage and all the baby shit like that, and you grow up to be kind of a cute kid, and then you get into the 9, 10, 11 range, somewhere in there maybe, and now you're kind of growing up and you're kind of more of a big kid. Well, there you go. You get into the big kid stage and stuff like that, and then life goes on further. And as it goes on further, you have less time in your life, because at least for me, a woman came into my life, and of course, the same did for my cousin a little bit later on, all that kind of great stuff. So that's how it goes. So the women take up all the time, and that's that, but that's fine, because I guess they're there for that or something. Anyway, my Uncle Leo died from liver problems. It was not from drinking, actually. So we can rule that out. But like I said, he did have a troubled life. But this man would walk to the end of the earth for people. Whether it was his wife, or his son, or his brothers, or his sister, or his parents, or anybody else that meant something to him, he would walk forever to get what they wanted. One of the things that he reunited me with were the Joray fruit rolls. I had a short video of that some years ago. Let me just pop that in here now. My fruit rolls? My new ones? Yeah. I love that kind. I used to have these all the time when I was a kid. All the time. They were right on the deli counter in the supermarket, and you just grab them. And I forget if they were 25 cents, or if they were 50 cents, or even 75 cents, but my parents or grandmother or whoever used to get them for me, because it was sort of fruit, kind of. And I got 9 different flavors, There's cherry, sour apple, panoply, grape, watermelon, fruit punch, strawberry, apricot, one of the watermelon, another cherry, I don't know, there's like other flavors too, I forget. Raspberry, I keep forgetting that kind, and maybe one other one in here somewhere, but anyway, I got 2 big boxes of them, and total for the 2 boxes with shipping, they end up being about 57 cents a piece, so not too bad. I'm so glad that they still make them. You can get them at, I beg my pardon, you get them at JorayCandy.com. I gotta run. I used to get those when I was a little kid, like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years old. My grandmother used to buy them. They used to be at the local grocery store, right on the shelf at the deli. And then they vanished. And I went over to my Uncle Leo's house one day, and he had them. And I said, "Oh my God, they still make them." They still make them today. You can still go and get them. Um, I was reunited with an old friend, basically, is what happened. And I told him, I said, "You don't understand how much I love these. My grandmother used to get them for me and stuff like that." And do you know that he went out to different places and got me like 2 big boxes of them? And I used to have what I like to call a fruit roll-up attack. They're fruit rolls, as they call them, but the colloquial leading national brand term is fruit roll-ups. So I used to call them that, and I used to sit and eat like fucking 6 of them, one after the next, one after the next, one after, and I just binge on these motherfucking things. Just eat like 6 different fucking flavors. So good, and all natural. So there you go. Okay? That was one thing. And I was at his house another time, and one of the reasons I was over at his house was because my cousin got a computer, and because I'm the resident computer dick, I used to go to his place a lot. So there you go. We had some fun times. I remember that computer didn't work out of the box, and I had to fix it. And that was interesting. It so seems that the IDE cable, that's how long ago this was, on the hard drive, was not plugged in all the way or had fallen out, despite the fact that they plugged it in and ran a bead of hot glue on it. That didn't even hold. Anyway, that was one of the first hurdles, and I don't know whatever happened to that machine. It doesn't matter anyway. Another thing that my Uncle Leo did was one time when I was at his house, he said, "Do you want to try these peppers?" I said, "What are these? I've never seen them before." He said, "They're a cherry pepper. They're about, yay big. Okay. And it's stuffed with prosciutto and provolone. And then it's kept in a jar of olive oil." He said, "They're spicy." I said, "Okay." And here I was at 17, 18 years old, something like that. They were fucking delicious. I love those peppers to this day. He said, "I made those." I said, "Oh, really?" He said, "Yeah." He used to go out and buy all of the ingredients and make it fresh himself. You can buy them store-made and even pre-packaged. That's really all I get today, of course, as Uncle Leo's not here anymore, but he made different variants for me over the years. There was an interesting little tidbit that I remember. At one point, he had made me a different style using a different kind of pepper. They were long ones. I don't know what kind of peppers they were. I don't remember. And he called them long shots. And there you go. It was a one-off that he made for me once. And I saved those. He made them for me, and like a year went by. And I was in college at the time. And I said, when I graduate, then I'm going to open and enjoy those. So it gave me something to look forward to. And when I graduated from college, I had that day. The day which was the day after finals. So I'm officially done with college, and I don't have to go back. I was free yet again. Still working, but I was free from that. And I happened to be off that day from work. And I got up, and I was still living at my parents' house, and I opened that jar, and I got out some of the long shots, and I went in the back room of my parents' house, which we called the Florida room, and I sat and I enjoyed those. And sitting next to me was a sound design all-in-one stereo that had like a tape player and the radio, and I forget if it had a turntable on it. If it did, the needle was shot, or it was garbagey anyway. And it had a CD. No, it didn't have a record player. It had a CD changer, 3 CDs. The carousel one, that where the big platter would rotate around. You don't remember? Yeah, I figured. So anyway, yeah, any of the old folk like me would remember that. And I had some nice, like, smooth jazz music in there. And man, I just sat there for like an hour and listened to a CD, and I ate these peppers, and that was a really, really, really good time. Didn't have to get drunk or do anything, just enjoy life like that. And it was all possible because of my Uncle Leo. But then there was another time with the peppers where he got orange Jamaican peppers. Well, I don't remember if I ever told this as an old war story or not, but generally what would happen, because these things were so spicy, is maybe an hour or so after I ate them, they went right through me. And at that point, I had to go to the bathroom, and fast. And when I would get into the bathroom and I'd get on the toilet, I would explode. It was explosive every time. That's how potent these things were. It was absolutely explosive, and it was awesome. It was so explosive that you look in the toilet afterwards and you had pepper shrapnel in there. There was fucking shrapnel. Anyway, he made the Jamaican peppers. And it was 7 something in the evening in the summer. X-Joe81X and I had planned the next day to go to Splish Splash, which is a water park out on the east end of Lawn Guyland. And I said, no, this will be good. You know, I'll eat the peppers now. And by like 8, 9 o'clock, I'll go to the bathroom. They'll be out of me, and everything will be fine. Wake up tomorrow, we'll go to Splish Splash, we'll have a great day. Well, my body said, oh, no, you didn't!
I told you. What did I tell you? Didn't I tell you? 'Cause I told you. And when did I tell you? A long time ago. And what did I say will happen when I told you? Exactly what just happened.
That's what happened, okay? My body said, oh, yeah? You had this all planned out? You're not shitting today, buddy. And I went to bed, and I said, well, you know what? I'm sure when I wake up in the morning, I'll have to shit. Well, it didn't happen, folks. And on the way to Splish Splash, there was almost an X-Joe81X shitting his pants moment. But this was me we were talking about. Oh, man. So I remember my Uncle Leo used to make these peppers for me. I made it to the toilet, by the way. No damage done. Anyways, he used to do that. And he would make all kinds of other food. And it was always delicious. And he always had something else interesting. I was at his house once, and he said, here, you can make your own soda. I said, what the fuck are you talking about? He said, this is real Coca-Cola syrup. I said, how do you buy that? He says, you can't here in Brooklyn. There was always a place in Brooklyn where you could get this stuff. And he had seltzer, and then you would mix in the Coke syrup, and you'd have to give it a quick stir to get it, you know. So you do get rid of a little of the carbonation that way, but still, it was freshly made right then and there like that. And you could also put a little more syrup or a little less syrup, depending how you wanted it. If you wanted a stronger Coke flavor or not as strong, and you could play with that and, mix different things in and stuff. So he always had something interesting like that. My Uncle Leo also owned a direct drive washer, and my dad had to go over there and replace the agitator dogs because they noticed that it wasn't washing properly. And he went and he replaced the agitator dogs. This is way before YouTube and way before any of that stuff. They had a direct drive, and he fixed it back in the day. Maybe something with his dryer once. Sometimes my dad would go there and fix stuff for him. But my Uncle Leo was he was the most fun uncle that I had. I lost my Uncle David in 2008, and I don't have too many memories of that for some reason. I think I was just too tied up at Tiny Middle that I didn't have time to live this out. I don't know. So it's all like a mental block. I just have a couple little blurbs here and there in my mind. Nothing I can even put into words. But that was in 2008. Now I have time to think about stuff. And if you recall, I think it was 2017, I lost my grandmother. And that was a very rough time. Well, my Uncle Leo, I was close with, but not like Grandma. Grandma was over every weekend. I would see my Uncle Leo on the holidays and maybe a couple of other times during the year. But it wasn't even a monthly thing or anything like that. And of course, in retrospect, it was certainly not enough. My Uncle Leo was overweight, and he was often the butt of fat jokes, and that was perfectly fine with him. He was a very jolly-natured person. He always had a joke, although his brother David, when he was dying, said to him, "You'll never be as funny as me." And Leo nodded and said, "You're right, I never will," but he was certainly next in line for that. He was the most fun uncle. He was the uncle that wasn't afraid to fart in front of you. Just to kind of put that out right there. He often had quick lines here and there, such as, I went to the mall, I saw a sign that said "Fine for smoking," so I lit up. So that was that. Little lines like that here and there, but when I got the news that he died, and we kind of knew this was coming, we sort of had enough notice, but by the same token, it's always too soon. When we got the news, I was like, okay, my dad told me, or my mother told me, and I'm like, all right, thanks, and that was it. I hung up the phone. The funeral's going to be some days later or whatever. So I just go about what I was doing, and then I would just have flashbacks in my mind of my Uncle Leo. And flashbacks. And flashbacks. Just little tidbits. Little things. Little pictures in my mind that had a little soundbite to go with them. And I just remembered, and of course they were all happy times, good times, stuff like that. And one of the things that I most closely associated my Uncle Leo with was his car. And this car is sort of an interesting story in and of itself. This was not his first car, obviously, because he was older. And he had other cars, but I guess he had fallen on harder times or whatever, and he needed a car. My dad ended up giving him our 77 or 76 Chevy Chevette that we had. There is a Polaroid of me in that car that is, the exposure is all wrong because of the windows behind us, my mother and I. So we are all dark in the picture, but you could make out what it was, and it was that car. I think that was the only picture of it. There's a story with that car, but that's not what we're here for now. My uncle that I remember mostly was driving was a 1979 Chevrolet Monte Carlo. This was kind of a specially type one for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, my Uncle David, his younger brother, had bought that car used, 2 years old, in 81. And I think he bought that particular one because it had the optional 305 V8 engine. I know that was a V8 engine, and that was the only one that was offered in that year, so it had to be the 305. And that was that. And he had that car. It was very unique styling on that car. It was unmistakable the way they used to make cars. And these are built the old way, like the Buick. But it did have, you know, a catalytic converter and the emissions and all that shit that happened during the 70s that the Buick never saw because it's from the 60s. And it had electronic ignition and the whole da-da-da. And my Uncle Leo drove that car for years. And it was iconic and synonymous with him. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to roll some footage from then. I'm going to show you, this is part of our Rosh Hashanah holiday in 1998, September of 1998. And here I was at 19 years old with a full-size VHS camcorder on my shoulder. And I was the annoying kid with the camcorder on my shoulder. Now, here's the funny part about that. I just bet the family, who's always, put that down, don't point that at me, wah, 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 would be elated to see footage never before seen by them of their brother who has since passed. I'm the only one who has it, and it's already digitalized. So there you go. But I'm going to roll that for you. What I'm going to roll for you is when he first showed up and he was kind of getting out of the car. And then we're going to switch to nighttime when it was all over. And you'll actually get to hear it start up. You can't see much, but the car did have lighting below, like under the dashboard kind of thing. So you'll see him actually prime the carbonator and then turn the key and step on the gas slightly until it fired. You'll hear the buzzer and the whole thing like that. I just, you know, I realized I knew I had that footage, and I just went through it now to find that, because I want you to see the car, and this way you'll know who this guy is and how jovial he really was. So let me go ahead and put that footage in here, and there's something very important that I'm going to tell you right after that.
Who's this, Leo?
Yeah.
Good.
We were trying to figure out if you had a use for it, and we figured out that if I brought the safe here, you could put the Florida room in there. What the fuck is that? It's Jason, yeah.
What else do you want me to bring in?
Oh, nothing, I think it's over here.
I just want to see what it was like from this end.
Where's the keys?
Where's the keys? I'll eat the
Kevin
soup.
has
Where's
that
the
week.
spoon? Are we learning yet?
I gotta go buy red peppers.
Terminator 2.
He's gotta go buy red peppers.
Are we learning yet?
Yeah.
Red pepper stands for Brad.
You're staying, right? Okay.
Bye, Dad.
Okay, so one other thing I'll tell you about that car. He had to have just about fucking everything fixed on that car. Everything would always break on that car. It's GM. It's 1979. What else would you expect? My 81 Chevy Citation was no different. You were changing a starter every couple of months, an alternator every couple of months, adding oil because it burned it or leaked it or you name it. You know, nothing on my old Chevy worked except for the lights and the turn signals. And that was pretty much it. Even the manual windows broke on that car. The manual windows broke. It actually did on the Monte Carlo also, but I remember one other time. Oh, in fact, I could give you a little story before I tell you the little tidbit that I'm saving about that car. I remember I had gone to my Uncle Leo with the whiff, then girlfriend. He was in Brooklyn, so we drove out to Brooklyn, and then we got in Leo's car, and he drove us somewhere, and we had lemon ices from Brooklyn. This is the OG, okay? The original gangster. This is the shit. This is where it came from. This is where it started. This was the best you could possibly get. He also took me, I just remembered, one time when I was there, just me, to get falafel. I'll let you Google it. The best I ever had and probably ever will have. It was so good to sit there with him and eat falafel. Oh my God. But we went for ices. Now, at this point, the car was, this was in the late 90s, so the car was pushing 20 years old, and it kind of had lived a hard life living in Brooklyn all of those years. Cars didn't really last that long. It kept running. But I remember his wife, my Aunt Mary, was standing on the sidewalk there, and the exhaust came to the back of the car and jut out that way, which is where she was standing. So he started the car, and a big cloud of blue smoke came out. Oil, I guess, went past the valve seats and got in the engine, and I guess it was just kind of normal for that engine to do that. I don't know. You can't see on the video clip because I didn't think to record that, or it didn't do it then, or I don't know, but... And Mary was standing right in that cloud as it came out of the exhaust, and she said, "Oh, I guess I should stand over here." So that was kind of funny that I remember. So there was that. And that car, I could tell you so much more about that car. But I can tell that if you're really interested, I could tell you a lot of other things about that car, but if you are interested, let me know in the comments. I'll leave that for another time because that's not what we're here for. As I said, I was sitting around and I keep getting all these flashbacks. Smell memory was unlocked. I was sitting at the computer, I was doing my thing, and oh my God. I'm sitting in the Monte Carlo. If you've ever had a smell come back that was not there at all, but you remembered it so well, almost as if you could smell it again, I unlocked fucking smell memory. That was so powerful. It really, it bothered me for a while. But, a couple days went by, and now it's time for the funeral. So I'm going to tell you about that now. This is sort of a comedy of how dysfunctional my family actually is, mixed with a lot of good along the way. Now, I found out about this, and I said, okay, I know that my sister had sort of written off my Uncle Leo years ago for something he said, something he did. I don't remember. It was not... She felt it was hurtful to her. He didn't harm her in any way, but whatever it was, she kind of wrote him off, as she did the rest of the family. She doesn't talk to my parents anymore or anything like that, but apparently she's still going to be in the will. I haven't really figured that one out. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. She's entitled to some, but certainly not most. Anyway, she wrote off Uncle Leo a long time ago, and I figured it would be at least the right thing to do to let her know that he passed. Because, let's face it, you kind of like to know who's still around and who's not. It's just something that's nice to know. So, I sent her an email, and I said, thought you'd like to know, he passed away on such and such day, and this and that. Well, a couple days went by, and phone rings. It's my sister. And she said, so what time is this? I didn't think she had any intention whatsoever of going. But she did, and she showed up. The way it ended up working out was probably for the better, where she and her boyfriend drove in separately, and I went with my parents, which actually was very helpful to them, because I was acting as a navigator, because you give my mother a map and she doesn't even know which way to hold it, much less anything else. So we had to go. This was yesterday, which... the 20th, I think, of December. They claim that's the busiest travel day of the year. So we have to drive into New Jersey. Not my favorite place. In fact, one of my least favorite places. But it is what it is. It wasn't too bad driving in. An hour and 45 minutes to maybe 2 hours. Maybe 2:15. Going home was a solid 3 hours, and that was only back to my parents' house. I then had to get in my car and spend another half hour getting home. That was a long day yesterday. So if you had noticed over the past week that I've kind of been sort of quiet, this is why all of that occurred. All right. Anyway, we show up at the place. Now you got to remember my mother. I told you the story in one of the Shekels episodes, I think part 2, and her walker. So we got to deal with the walker bullshit. My dad's all fucked up, so he has trouble walking because his knees are shot. Not that he's ever going to get replacements. You know how that's going to go with the Shekels. But anyway. Oh, now we'll leave that for another Shekel story another time. But anyways, so we go, and we got to walk up this ramp, and my mother got about halfway up, and then we had to push. We had to help push kind of thing. We didn't, but it was just kind of funny to say. And you go in, and it's a funeral home, and if you've ever been to one, you know, there's people dressed in suits, and they're like, oh, who are you here for? Oh, Leo, yes, down the hall to the end and make a right, please. And, you know, they're very calm in the way they speak and things, and they're so kind to you and very nice, and all of these wonderful, happy horseshit. We just got their money. That's how it works in a funeral home, folks. This is how it goes. We're going to have another little tidbit like that coming later. We go into the room, And here's the funny thing, okay? My uncle, of course, was Jewish, like I am, and my dad, and his sister, and his other brother, and the whole family, you know. But his wife, Mary, is not. And because it goes by the mother's religion, my cousin is not Jewish either. That's fine. Leo was okay with celebrating Christmas with them. He had no problem with that. He was a heart of gold kind of guy. So he went along with all of that. And that was good. And they would come on the Jewish holidays when my grandfather used to host them and stuff. So it worked out. It was just a perfect kind of thing. And we go in the room, and my sister and her boyfriend are there already. And some other guy that she was talking to, that I later found out I knew, and maybe one or two other people, not really worth a mention. I couldn't put a name to them or who they are. But a little bit later, other people came in. My aunt and my other aunt and another uncle came in, and you know, more family and stuff like that, and 3 more cousins came, and you know, stuff like that. So they showed up a bit later, but we're going to go with the early stages there. So Mary was not Jewish. I don't know if you want to call it Catholic or Christian, or I don't know exactly, but that's a much more common religion here in the US. And the way it's done there, well, if you're of that faith and you've ever been to a funeral, there's flowers and the whole thing, and what's called an open casket, and you go up to view the body. In the Jewish side of things, we don't do that. It's a very... The ceremony is dead, if you will, along with the person. It's plain. The casket is a plain pine box. Nothing special, because Jews don't want to spend money, obviously. Haha. Flowers, none of that. You know, it's just quick, in and out. You don't even see the dead person. Nothing. So whatever you last saw them in a hospital, or however they died like that, that was your last memory. I don't like that, because as much as a dead body is not pleasing to look at, especially being a loved one, it is at least the last picture that you will have in your mind. I'm going to warn you, I'm probably going to cry some point in this, but I'm going to try to hold out as long as I can. I have that picture in my mind that I took in my mind yesterday, and it's pleasant. He looked quite good. So we'll say that. I also have a picture of my grandmother and even my grandfather. But my uncle, and I should mention that they opened the casket for us to see just as a last glimpse, but that's not how it's really supposed to. We kind of said, we're not going to tell God, just open it quick, let's see. You know, it was one of those kind of things. So, but I don't think I saw my Uncle David laid up like that. But Leo was there, and he's laid out like that. And his poor wife, Mary, my aunt, was right next to the casket. She didn't want to leave him, even though he was gone. So it was tough. And it was tough seeing Mary that way. Mary, I haven't seen a lot of this family, by the way. Oh, and I forgot to... Well, I didn't even get to that part, really. A lot of this family I haven't seen in... I'm going to say a good 10, maybe even 12 years, but a few people I did see 7 years ago when my grandmother died. So, but it was just for that. And, you know, I mean, that's kind of... This was just for this, but... Anyway, so I had a chat with Mary, and that was something that we had words here and there, just little small talk kind of stuff. And she told me how close she was with Leo. They were married for 43 years. And it was real tough to just see her like that. So I feel real bad. Just for her alone, not to mention how I feel. It's weird because I think the reason I'm crying more with this is my grandmother lived to be 98. And when you get to be that age, I mean, let's face it, okay? She lost her mind when she was about 90. So it was, she was kind of Looney Tunes upstairs and that. But, she just withered away over those last 8 years and that until she finally conked out. But at 98 years old, who could possibly complain? So I really wasn't upset when she died. It was more of a celebration of her life than it was grieving over her death. But this was different because Leah was only 69 years old. And my Aunt Mary, I feel bad for her. Their son, Kevin, my cousin. Now I'll tell you a little bit more about the funeral and that, and some of the fun family dysfunctional tidbits. On one of these videos somewhere, I didn't take the time to look. My cousin was over with Leo and Mary, everybody at my parents' house back in the late 90s, and it started to rain. And you overheard my uncle say, because my cousin just got a camera himself, camcorder. And you heard my uncle say, "Kevy, it's raining." Well, so it turns out, yesterday it was raining. Now, I haven't seen my cousin. He didn't come to my grandmother's funeral, so it's been 10, 12 years. And I said to myself, I know exactly what I'm going to say when I go up to him. And I went up to him and I shook his hand and I said, "Kevy, it's raining." So he gave me a hug and all that. And, yeah, that was just kind of a fun little tidbit. And we talked and shared some little tidbits here and there that went on. And anyway, a lot more of the family comes and whatever. And then they finally decide to get the officiant in and do the little service. In other words, your time here is up, so we're going to get this done and get you out of here to the cemetery, and you can finish off so we get our full payment, kind of thing. So some guy walked in. I got one other guy to tell you about. My sister was talking to a gentleman that was sitting there, and I couldn't place who this guy was. It seemed like I knew him, but it wasn't something like, "Damn, I've seen you somewhere." I couldn't place it. And that's because it was about 40 years ago that I remember this guy. This guy lived next door to my grandfather in Brooklyn. Leo lived only a couple of blocks away, so he was often over there at his father's house, so they'd bump into the neighbor. And you'd sometimes hang out they had a front porch, so you'd hang out there and you'd say hello and whatever, and this and that, "How you doing? How's your girlfriend? How's this?" You talk about shit like that. That's what was done in Brooklyn, and probably still goes on today like that. He had a nickname, this guy. It was either Porky or Corky. Can't quite remember, and the only one who would know for sure would be my grandmother, and she's gone. But Anyway, that's all I really remember about this guy. But after I was told that nickname, immediately, and after 40 years, I recognized this guy in full, clear vision. I said, oh my God. I was like 5 when I saw you last. Man, that's scary. That is really scary. And he looked good, this guy. So there was that. Anyway, the officiant comes in. I didn't know he was yet. He got there, 5-10 minutes early. Some guy didn't look American, really. Sort of sat in the back of the room and just kind of sat there and waited for a bit. And then it was time for him to come up there. Well, it turns out the guy was Filipino. There's no problem with that, but it's just he had a bit of an accent. And it just seemed a little weird to me to have a little bit of an accent when we're dealing with like Jewish people and not so Jewish people, but all American all around. Maybe that's all the place had. I don't know. Nothing bad about it. It just wouldn't have been my first choice. He did what he was supposed to. He was good. Nothing more to say, but just irked me a little bit. The service, in terms of what this guy said and did, he had the holy water and the whole thing, and Jews don't do any of that stuff, and we also wouldn't have the casket open like that, but there were little tidbits of Judaism mixed in here and there, which we're going to get to. Anyway, the officiant gets up, and he does his little thing, and my cousin gets up there. It took him about a good 10-15 seconds to start speaking. It was very tough for him. He sort of swallowed the frog in his throat, so to speak, and was able to read his paper that he'd written up. He later told me that he wrote it last night, the night before. I said, you always wait for the last minute, don't you? I just to play around. So he had some nice words, and there were some Yiddish phrases in there, and that was an interesting story to us, but not to you. So we'll skip that, but my uncle would say these kind of things, and it was just funny in that regard. So there was that, but okay, I'll tell you anyway. My dad, or my cousin's uncle, said, I wish you would have asked me about the Yiddish. I could have helped you pronounce it better. But my aunt likes to start trouble, so she went up to him and said, you should have called me about the Yiddish, and like shook her finger at him and shit. And I'm like, you don't have to be that brash. There's no reason for that. I'm probably overreacting. I know she meant it in kind of a playful way, but my dad approached it a lot more gentlemanly-like. It wasn't brash and shaking your finger at him, And what's it matter? Leo's dead. He's never going to hear this. Yeah, he saw from upstairs, and I get that, and he got to laugh at his son, I don't know what else to tell you. So, anyway, there was that little tidbit. Anyway, they get us out to the car, and we all drove ourselves to the funeral and the funeral procession, to the cemetery, and we get there. All right? So they unload the casket and get it over to the site, which, of course, is already dug out, and everything's all set. Truck is out of the way, and the bobcat and whatever they used to fill it in, So it's just parked there, idling, waiting till we're done. So anyway, that's it, and we get out of the car. Right this way, folks, up here, So here's my mother with her walker on the grass, and she has to walk, I don't know, down a short block, if you will. I don't know how far down it wasn't very far, but it was like for her, forget it, you know. Okay, she makes it. And we weren't all waiting for her. We were kind of all dawdling also. So whenever we get down there and this and that, so the officiant is there and he puts on his little thing again because that's his job. And he says the Lord's Prayer again and the whole nine. And they gave everybody a flower to leave on the casket. And he goes through his little ceremony. And it was fucking freezing cold out. But you grin and you bear it. And the wind was starting to whip a little bit. So that went through you. So you got even more cold. But we weren't out there that long that you're like fucking frozen solid, you know? So you do it for Leo, and that's that. As you would anybody who has passed. So he says his little thing, and then we kind of look on as the casket is lowered into the gravesite. And now it's starting to hit home. Because this is it, okay? If there's no knock on the lid, which there's not going to be, this is it. Well, Judaism likes to twist the knife a little bit further with that. And I was trying to avoid this, but my mother committed 2 faux pas in a row. One person I forgot to mention who showed up. My cousin was going out with this girl. We're just going to call her the ex-girlfriend. She was at my wedding, and they were a great couple together. Unfortunately, after a number of years, things didn't end up working out between them, and they broke up. He fell in love with another girl, and they got married. They eloped, so I didn't have a wedding to go to, which is good, because I also didn't have to give them any money. You know, it was just kind of a little thing. They did it with their parents as witnesses, and that was that, and they're married, and they're off on their own life. Okay, so that's that. And like I said, I haven't seen my cousin in a while, but the ex-girlfriend showed up because they were together for so long, and it was... She was notified about this, and she felt compelled to pay her respects, which is the right thing to do. So I hadn't seen her in, well, I think since my wedding, really, which was in 2005. So it's been 19 years. She said, "How are you?" I said, "I'm old." She says, "Your point? I'm old too." So anyway, there was that. So she was there. So anyway, you got to remember, here's my mother with her walker. And they had like a little tent thing set up. And after we were done with that, we came out of the tent and went around to the other side, because over there was the little Judaism part of... And the Jews do this, and I sort of frown upon this because it's really one of the toughest things to do in life. You are supposed to help bury the dead. I did this at my grandfather's funeral and my Uncle David's funeral and my grandmother's funeral and now this one, but I was trying to get out of it, which isn't exactly the right thing to do, but, you know, I like to avoid that. It's a symbolic thing where you take a shovel full of dirt and you throw it in the hole. Well, it's not the fact of getting the shovel full of dirt and throwing it in the hole. It's the sound it makes when it hits the casket. And that is the final moment when this happens. So that's really your final send-off of this. There's no headstone at this time. I'm going to get back to that in a second. There's no headstone at this time. That's like a year or two later. But anyway, we're all going, and my cousins go, and my other aunts and uncle, and everybody is shoveling the dirt. My dad, of course, did. And here's Fran with her walker. So she kind of holds the shovel and hands it to Jack for him to do it for her. Oh, give it up already. You could try a little bit, you know? And there's also this thing, I don't know, it's these stupid religion shits that bother me. Where they don't make, you know, they're all these symbolic things. But in the realm of it, like, this is campfire story material. This is made up shit. Oh, one other thing I forgot to mention, we'll get right back to that. They tear up a piece of clothing that was Leo's. Just a little swatch of it. And put a safety pin, and you just pin it on yourself. It's just a thing, I guess a memento. I don't know. It's a thing you do. After you shovel the dirt, and it's only like one shovelful. Now, some people go hog wild and they start working like fucking animals, throwing dirt in there. The real orthodox ones do that, and they have a much bigger pile of dirt. Well, this was not a big enough pile of dirt, but that's besides the point. When you're done, you can't hand the shovel to the next person. Instead, you have to put it in the dirt, stand it up, and then they have to come up, take the shovel, and shovel their dirt in, put it back in the pile for the next person to go. So here's Fran and her walker, and I'm waiting till the very end, because I just don't want to do this, because it just hurts me to have to. And as it was, I'm hearing everybody else doing it, and I'm hearing that sound. And the whiff was not with me because she worked the night before and then that night. So she had to sleep during the day and she just couldn't make it. So I didn't have a shoulder to cry on. My sister was with her boyfriend, Fran, and my dad. You know, what's two men crying on each other going to look good as, you know? So we kind of had to hold our own. So I'm hearing that sound, and I started to lose it. And rightfully so. And I got to the point where the tears welled up, and I'm getting to that point where I was this close to making a sound. I didn't even make a sobbing sound. Okay, but I was this close to just letting it out loud. And I didn't want to embarrass myself, so I was able to just stifle it back. And I haven't had that good cry yet. So, here's where my mother turns the fucking tables. Twice. My cousin's ex-girlfriend happens to be Russian. Fine. That's great. When she went to throw some dirt in the hole, she took the... Here, we can use this, okay? Think of this as the shovel. Here's the handle part, and this is the part that holds the dirt. You pick it up and you throw it in the hole, right? So the ex-girlfriend took the shovel and turned it upside down and got a little dirt on it, and she had a little trouble, as you might expect, but you do, you know. And she got a little dirt. Again, this is one of those symbolic things, right? she got a little bit of dirt on the back of the shovel, and my mother says, "Turn the shovel over, dear." She turned and gave her such a look. Like, I know what I'm doing, bitch. Because my mother can't keep her fucking mouth shut. That's because in Russian, that's a thing you do. And there is a reason for that. The reason for that is, and again, this is one of those symbolic things. When you take the shovel like this, you're digging into the earth to take earth out so you can plant something to grow and live. But by turning the shovel upside down, you are returning to the earth. What? Because allegedly we came from the earth, kind of thing. And that's the symbolism with it. And again, it's the same kind of thing as wearing the little swatch of the clothing of the deceased and the putting the shovel back in the dirt and not handing it to the next person. It's these little tidbits that are supposed to be symbolic but really don't mean much. And here's another fun one. Okay, you've heard this one before. And I'm going to dispel the mystery right here. It was a kind of, well, for lack of a better term, it was a very shitty day yesterday as far as the weather goes. It had rained already, and it kind of held off. And it turns out, when we got to the cemetery, my dad said, "You think we'll need the umbrellas?" I said, maybe just in case, you know. So that's what always happens. When you bring an umbrella, you ward off the rain. It's when you don't have the umbrella, then it rains, right? So anyway, you know, that's just a fun little tidbit, and it's non-denominational, and it happens to anybody. But here's where the other shit comes in, where you have to believe in it, which is it's so turned out that the rain held off until we all put our dirt in and we were all done and turned our backs and started walking back to the car. But I forgot to tell you one little part. But the rain held off. So let me just tell you, because I got on this tidbit thing. The rain held off till the very, 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 very end. And we're just starting to walk back to the cars, and you feel a drop. And it's going to start raining in that. So you hear, "Up, that was God. He held off the rain until it was over." No, it wasn't. Okay? It just was luck of the fucking draw. It was gonna rain then. It just so happened to work out in time. There you go. Mystery dispelled. That's it. You want to say it was God? Yay for you. Okay? You want to think that way? That's wonderful. But the fact of the matter is, the planet doesn't fucking care. It's gonna do what Mother Nature wants it to do. Alright? That's the story with that. Okay, so now getting back to the other faux pas that my mother committed. Everybody is taking their shovel full of dirt, and taking their shovel full of dirt, and taking their shovel full of dirt. And I'm kind of hanging back in the crowd, because I don't want to have to do this. Mothers often say that they have eyes in the back of their head. Well, it's funny because everything else on my mother is broken, decrepit, and doesn't work. Jay, hand me my coffee. Okay, here you go. And I hand it to her, and she's like this. And it's like, you're going to see, it's going to spill out of the fucking cup. I'm like, what do you fucking need to be back on a sippy cup kind of shit? That's the medication I'm on. It does that. I said, well, get off of this shit. Come on, you know? So anyway, I'm hanging back, hanging back, hanging back. Well, so it turns out those eyes in the back of her fucking head are still 20 fucking 20, folks. And there she is at her walker, like somebody at a podium or a lectern in a courtroom talking to the judge. And she's there on her walker like this. And then you hear, Jason? You have to understand that my mother also has one other thing that works on her, which is very unfortunate, which is her voice. She's loud! And that's why I have the franometer. Because when she wasn't as decrepit and she used to come over, or I would go over there, I would turn that on. And I know what the proper decibel rating for normal speech is. And she was always like 2 clicks louder than everybody else. So when she quietly says, Jason, everybody heard. And now I'm on the spot to go and do this. And I said in my mind, as I'm trying to hold back the fucking tears, I said in my mind, you bitch! I was this close! I was this close! So I went and I threw the dirt, and it was hard, to say the least. Remember how I said in the beginning that my sister I was surprised she even showed up. I guess she's getting older and decided it's probably right to pay her last respects to somebody, even if she wrote them off in life. So there's that. Okay, so that's why she showed up, but she was there just for the funeral, because after that we're going back to the house, and there's going to be little noshes here and there. That's Jewish, Yiddish, Hebrew, I don't know what the fuck, for little bites to eat. Little something. They had cheese and cracklers. They had little sandwiches that were made. They had some cookies. There were some munchkins from Dunkin' Donuts and coffee and the whole thing like that. Little bits to eat. That was that. Okay? And you talk. And it was kind of more the same when you showed up and you were there and you saw Leo laid out like that. But then you start talking, so how you been? Where you working now? Oh, really? Yeah. You know, and it gets to be one of these get to know everybody again kind of things. So it was more the family being together. So I'm standing there in the house, and I just happen to go in the kitchen, and there's sort of a little alcove where there's counter space on either side and a sink up by the window, and I just kind of hung out there because nobody was there at the moment. I like to avoid the crowds. So I'm just kind of standing there, and my Aunt Mary comes by, and she's like, you know, this really sucks. I said, well, of course, yeah. She said if Leo was here, he would be so happy that everybody is here together, enjoying, eating, drinking, talking to each other, all of that stuff. He would be overjoyed. And I said, well, he's seeing this right now. And that was a nice thing to say, and if you want to believe in that and whatever, you know, I'd like to think there is something. I can't prove it or disprove it. And, you know, quite frankly, as far as the physics of it tells me, once you're dead, you're dead. And there ain't nothing after. If you live on in spirit and it is what they tell you it is, that's great. But if it's not, there's no recourse. You can't come back and fucking kill everybody. And say, you told me there was going to be an afterlife, you know. So it's like a one-sided deal that we're all fucked. But, you know, I just had these kind of heartfelt words with Mary, and it was tough because now she's widowed, and her son doesn't live there. He lives in another state, close by, but another state. And, it's kind of a thing where he's grown up, that he's got his own life now, and he's married. So, is he going to take his mother in, or are they going to move there? I don't know what's going to happen. My aunt is 78. Mary is 78. She looked great for her age. Man, I hadn't seen her in like 10-something years, 12 years maybe. And she looked like exactly as I remembered her. The only thing you could possibly say that you can't hide and you can't avoid was you could hear in her voice, it was growing a little bit weak. Because after so many years, you know what I mean? You can tell how the voice changes for somebody who's a lot older as opposed to somebody a lot younger. Mine's still in fairly good shape, so I'm good with that, but it's changing over the years, I can tell. But it is what it is. It's just a fact of getting older. But she looked great, and she was really in good spirits, and I think she held her shit together a lot better than I did. I'm going to tell you one last one that it was just something I noticed, and it really, the sentiment of it really hit home so hard. Years ago, when they had their place in Brooklyn, I was over there a lot because of the computer and to see Leo and Mary and Kevin. I was over there a lot, as much as I could, really, seeing them. And I would just take notice of a little note on the fridge. They were little nothing notes. I don't even have one to tell you. Except for this one. And I saw this and it really, God, it hurt me. It hurt me to see this note on the fridge because I understand the pain just through that. My Aunt Mary wrote it. And the part that hurts is that he's never going to see this note. But she wrote, Leo, I miss you. I will love you forever. And he's never going to see that note. But it's just so sweet that she did that, Sometimes and I guess it happens to a lot of us, when you're the party that is directly involved, when you're the party who's directly involved, you tend to remain strong through it. I remember when my friend Joe, when his father passed away, and he was there, his sister was there, his mother was there, and they stood like soldiers. They were so strong. They weren't, bawling their eyes out. But the same thing kind of happened to me when my grandmother passed, because she was so close. And I was so directly involved that I kind of held it together. And I had a video of that telling what happened. And whoever the officiant was there asked if anybody had anything to say. And I just stepped up. I had no speech. I had no paper to read off of. And the words I had were straight from the heart. And it was a little bit, like I had a little bit of a story to tell. And everybody came up to me after and said, "That was so nice what you said." And it was, because I was speaking direct from the heart. But I held it together through all of that until I was done and the dirt was thrown in. And then I couldn't hold back anymore. So I was very strong through the whole thing. And Mary and Kevin were, but that note just absolutely broke my heart that she would put that up knowing that he would only see it from above. Oh, that's just real painful. It just is really painful. Well, I had to get that out off camera. I feel better now. I don't sound the same, of course, because that's how it gets. Nose gets stuffed up and that, but just gonna have to bear with me. I'm really sad that he's gone. It's just, he was so much fun, that guy. You could just joke around with everything, and there's so much more that I haven't even told. So many little tidbits, little stories, little nuances, just things here and there that I remember. But just the other things, reuniting me with those Joray fruit rolls, and the peppers, and celebrating with Uncle Leo's peppers when I graduated from college. Those are, you can't erase those memories. They're always going to be around. There were good times and bad times that he went through, as happens with everybody. I remember a not so great time. But, everything got better, and that was that. One other little just thing that I thought I kind of wanted to mention before, but never got a chance. Like I said, the thing I most closely identify with Leo was that Monte Carlo. Well, it gets on in years, and it gets to the point where enough already. I got to drive that car once. All of the shock absorbers were completely gone, so the car was practically just on springs, and it didn't pay to fix, or if he did fix it, the new shocks would just go out, because Brooklyn, potholes, all that kind of bad stuff, whatever, I don't know, so he just lived with it, But that car just took him fucking everywhere. Everywhere. And like I said, there's a lot more stories with that car. Just in general. Oh, man. There's so many stories with that car. But eventually, time moves on, and he has to get something else. So he had to get rid of it. I don't know the precise reason, but... That was toward the very tail end, what you saw before. Because it really was not long after that he got rid of it. And he ended up with, and I cannot tell you precisely the year, maybe a 93 Ford Taurus. Not my choice of car at all. There were too many of those around. But one time, when the wife was still a girlfriend, he went away with my parents for the weekend. And he left his car. And this is the kind of guy that he was. He said, And he was not as fortunate with money, but he knew how to spend it. And he didn't waste it per se that I was ever told about or knew about, although maybe it was. I don't know. But he threw money where it was nice. And he didn't even have to do this, but he did. He said, hey, you want to make a quick 20 bucks? Wash and wax this car. Everything you need is in the trunk, and he threw me the keys. And I got the then girlfriend, now wife, and she helped me. We washed and waxed that car. And it looked real good after. And he drove that for a number of years, but Ford struck. And the transmission went out. He had it rebuilt. It still was fucked up. It was never the same. And I don't remember exactly when this was, how it happened, etc., etc. But I had, at the time, Old Clanky. And he said, I want to look into a Camry. Can I take your car around the block? So I said, of course. So he got in and he said, oh yeah, I like it. And he ended up getting one. Did he still have that now? It's Toyota, right? It's not living in Brooklyn over all those potholes. Not that New Jersey's any great shakes, but probably better than Brooklyn. I don't know if that car is still around. I didn't ask, and it was not the right time or whatever. I don't remember what year. It could have been in 05 that he got. I don't know. I'm guessing. But I know that he got one. And that was that. So that was nice. And it was kind of, he always had to wait the longest in life to get what everybody else had. My dad, of course, was the oldest, so he got his house and married. And his sister, his younger brother, married, house, the whole thing. But he always just had this apartment in Brooklyn. And the three of them lived there. And they made do with what they had. But he always wanted his own house, but he couldn't afford it. And finally found this place in Jersey. And then he got sick and he died. So he lived a tough life, But man, the stories he would tell, everything else, I'll miss him a lot. That really hurt. But this is what happens in life. It just is. I'm doing all right. I'm making it through. Things will get better over the next week or two. The memories of his passing will go, but the good memories of him will always live on. I guess that's really about it that I can think of offhand. So that's going to do it. Thanks for bearing with me through this difficult time. I really appreciate all of your support. Please make sure you click like, make sure you click subscribe, and take care. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.